Dr. Gary Miller was a man of numbers, a mathematician and logician. His world revolved around reason and proof. He taught at universities, sharing his knowledge with eager minds. Dr. Miller believed in what he could see, touch, and, above all, prove. Religion, with its inherent faith-based tenets, held little appeal for him. His analytical mind craved evidence and logical explanations. Dr. Miller's skepticism extended to all religions, including Islam. He had heard about the Quran, the holy book of Islam, but he, like many others in the West, held misconceptions about its teachings. Dr. Miller's curiosity, however, eventually led him to obtain a copy of the Quran. He decided to approach it as he would any complex mathematical problem, with an objective eye and a desire to understand its underlying principles. What Dr. Miller found in the Quran surprised him. As a seasoned scholar, he had approached the text with a certain level of skepticism, expecting to find a book filled with contradictions and outdated notions. It was not the book of hatred and intolerance he had imagined. Instead, he found a text that spoke of peace, compassion, and understanding among people of different backgrounds and beliefs. Instead, he encountered a text that actively encouraged critical thinking. The Quran seemed to invite its readers to ponder deeply, to question, and to seek knowledge. The Quran, he discovered, directly challenged readers to find inconsistencies within its verses. This was a bold move for any religious text, and it piqued his curiosity. This direct challenge intrigued Dr. Miller. He was fascinated by the Quran's confidence in its own message and its open invitation for scrutiny. He was used to religious texts that presented their truths as absolute, beyond question. The Quran, however, seemed to welcome examination and debate. The Quran's bold invitation to scrutiny sparked a desire in him to delve deeper. He wanted to understand why this text was so confident in its own consistency. This was unlike anything he had encountered before. The Quran's approach was refreshing and intellectually stimulating. The Quran's confidence in its own consistency and its open invitation for analysis were compelling. It was as if the text was saying, "Go ahead, examine me, you will find no flaws." Dr. Miller, a man who thrived on intellectual challenges, felt drawn to explore further. He saw this as an opportunity to apply his analytical skills to a new and intriguing subject. He saw the Quran's challenge as a unique opportunity. It was a chance to test his own understanding and to see if he could uncover any inconsistencies. If he could find flaws in the Quran's logic, he could disprove its divine origin. This was a task that excited him, as it combined his love for critical thinking with his scholarly pursuits. This became his new mission, to apply his analytical skills to the Quran and uncover its inconsistencies. He began to study the text with great care, looking for any signs of contradiction or error. As he delved deeper, he found himself increasingly challenged by the Quran's depth and complexity. The more he studied, the more he realized that this was not a simple task. The Quran's challenge was not just about finding inconsistencies. It was about understanding a text that had been revered for centuries. It was about engaging with a rich tradition of scholarship and interpretation. Dr. Miller's journey with the Quran was just beginning. He knew that this would be a long and intellectually rewarding path, one that would test his skills and expand his understanding. The Quran's challenge had opened a new chapter in his life, one filled with questions, discoveries, and a deeper appreciation for the power of critical thinking. As Dr. Miller delved deeper into the Quran, he began to encounter more surprises. Each page seemed to reveal something new and unexpected, challenging his previous understanding of religious texts. One of the most unexpected discoveries was the Quran's portrayal of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Unlike his previous assumptions, he found that Mary was given a place of high honor and respect in the Quran. The Quran spoke of Mary with the utmost respect and reverence. She was described as a woman of purity and piety, chosen above all women to bear Jesus. It recognized the virgin birth of Jesus as a divine miracle, a concept that resonated with Dr. Miller's own Christian upbringing. This acknowledgement of the virgin birth was not just a passing mention, but a significant event in the Quranic narrative. The Quran's affirmation of Jesus as a prophet of God, not a deity, was initially jarring for Dr. Miller. This was a stark contrast to the Christian belief in the divinity of Jesus. And it took him some time to reconcile these differences. However, the more he read, the more he began to appreciate the Quran's consistent monotheistic message. The emphasis on the oneness of God, Allah, was a central theme that permeated the entire text. The Quran's emphasis on the oneness of God, Allah, and its rejection of the Trinity challenged Dr. Miller's preconceived notions. He found himself grappling with these ideas, trying to understand the theological implications. He found himself questioning his own understanding of God and the nature of prophethood. This was not an easy process, but it was a journey of intellectual and spiritual growth. This intellectual wrestling with unfamiliar concepts, however, was not met with resistance or condemnation in the Quran. Instead, he found a text that encouraged inquiry and reflection. Instead, Dr. Miller found encouragement to ponder, to reflect, and to seek knowledge from all sources. The Quran seemed to invite readers to engage with it, to question, and to seek deeper understanding. This approach was refreshing and empowering for Dr. Miller, as it aligned with his own academic and spiritual quest for truth. As he continued his studies, Dr. Miller began to see the Quran not as a book of rigid dogma, but as a living text that spoke to the human experience. It addressed the complexities of faith, doubt, and the search for meaning in a way that was both profound and accessible. This journey through the Quran was transformative for Dr. Miller. It opened his eyes to new perspectives and deepened his appreciation for the rich tapestry of religious thought. He realized that the Quran, like all great religious texts, was a source of wisdom that could speak to people of all backgrounds and beliefs. In the end, Dr. Miller's exploration of the Quran was not just an academic exercise, but a deeply personal journey. It was a journey that challenged him, inspired him, and ultimately brought him closer to understanding the divine in a new and profound way. Section 4. The Prophet Muhammad's humility. Another aspect of the Quran that struck Dr. Miller was its portrayal of the Prophet Muhammad. As he delved deeper into the text, he was continually amazed by the consistent emphasis on Muhammad's humility and humanity. Unlike the founders of other religions who were often placed on pedestals, Muhammad was depicted as a humble messenger of God. This portrayal was not just a fleeting mention, but a recurring theme throughout the Quran. The Quran emphasized that Muhammad was only a human being, chosen by God to deliver his message. He was not to be worshipped, but rather respected and followed as a guide. This humility resonated deeply with Dr. Miller. He found it profoundly moving that the Quran consistently reminded its readers of Muhammad's human nature, his struggles, and his perseverance. He found it refreshing that the Quran did not deify Muhammad or attribute supernatural powers to him. Instead, it highlighted his role as a servant of God, tasked with a monumental mission. The Quran presented Muhammad as a man who struggled, faced rejection, and yet persevered in delivering God's message. His journey was marked by trials and tribulations, making his achievements even more remarkable. Dr. Miller, accustomed to grand narratives of religious figures, found Muhammad's story relatable and inspiring. The Prophet's life was a testament to resilience, patience, and unwavering faith. This humanization of a prophet was a new concept for Dr. Miller, one that challenged his previous assumptions about religious figures. He had always seen prophets as distant, almost mythical beings. But the Quran's portrayal brought Muhammad closer to the realm of human experience. The Quran's portrayal of Muhammad as a guide, a warner, and a bringer of good news rather than an object of worship sparked a curiosity in Dr. Miller's mind. He began to see the prophet not just as a religious figure, but as a model of humility and dedication. This new perspective led Dr. Miller to explore further. He read more about Muhammad's life, his interactions with his followers, and his approach to leadership. He was particularly struck by stories of Muhammad's kindness, his fairness, and his deep concern for the well-being of others. These stories painted a picture of a leader who led by example, who was approachable and compassionate. Muhammad's humility was not just in his words, but in his actions, in the way he lived his life. For Dr. Miller, this was a revelation. It made him rethink the qualities of true leadership and the essence of humility. He realized that true greatness lies not in power or glory, but in service and humility. Inspired by Muhammad's example, Dr. Miller began to incorporate these values into his own life. He sought to be more humble, more compassionate, and more dedicated to serving others. The Prophet Muhammad's humility had a profound impact on Dr. Miller, transforming not just his understanding of Islam, but his approach to life itself. It was a journey of discovery, one that brought him closer to the true essence of faith and humanity. Section 5. The Miracle of Iron. Beyond its theological and historical narratives, the Quran also contained verses that seemed to allude to scientific phenomena. One such verse that captivated Dr. Miller's attention spoke about the creation of iron. The Quran stated that iron was sent down from the heavens, a statement that initially seemed strange to Dr. Miller. However, as a scientist, he knew that iron is not naturally found on Earth. It is formed in the hearts of stars through a process called stellar nucleosynthesis. The Quran's statement about iron being sent down could, Dr. Miller realized, be interpreted as a reference to its cosmic origin. This realization sent chills down his spine. How could a book written over 1400 years ago contain such scientifically accurate information? The more he explored these scientific allusions, the more Dr. Miller felt that he was uncovering a hidden layer of knowledge within the Quran.